pioneer in the field of psychedelic research, and you have been at it for almost 20 years now. I'm curious how your own thinking on the space has evolved, how you have changed your mind on psychedelics.
Yeah, well, it's changed quite a lot. I mean, if I think about where I was 20 years ago, I was much more on the fence about the therapeutic potential. For me, psychedelics were fascinating tools to get into the mind, in a sense, like really powerful tools to reveal secrets about the mind that otherwise we can't really get to. But I was kind of on the fence about the therapeutic thing. I was like, and rewinding to the culture then, there was much more emphasis on these drugs as potential tools to understand psychosis, like they model what it is to be in a state of madness. So I was influenced by that. That was strong in the scientific community. You can only really study psychedelics if you're using them as tools to show what madness is, in a sense. It was quite a daring thing to propose a therapeutic potential, even though now things have massively shifted. So that shifted in my mind on my own through the work we started doing, even the initial brain imaging work, healthy people, putting them in a scanner, not the best setting on the face of it, a noisy, confined space, the MRI scanner, and yet people would come out of that afterwards and say, I feel lighter. I feel like unburdened somehow. And so, we had that, and then we had some of the early work, like Roland Griffiths' work, reporting on well-being and these mystical type experiences. And then we had the brain imaging data, which was suggestive of therapeutic potential. So it was like a triangulation, putting everything together that then gave us confidence, like some others in the field, to do the therapeutic trials.
So speaking of the secrets of the mind, I'm curious to hear what is a secret you know about psychedelics, or a truth that you know about this work that is not yet widely known or widely accepted?
Well, we've got some data that isn't published yet that I'm really excited about. Whether or not they capture a truth or a principle, in a sense, we'll wait and see. But we are seeing things like we measure brain entropy under psychedelics and see it reliably increase in a dose-dependent way. So more psychedelic, bigger effect in a, now I know, somewhat specific way. So psychedelics do it, methamphetamine doesn't do it, even THC doesn't really do it in cannabis. We have that entropic brain effect predicting stuff downstream, which is probably the most exciting thing that other people don't know about, apart from when I give talks. So that's really powerful. If in a matter of minutes you can see the entropic brain effect and then predict people's improvements in mental health outcomes a month later, from what's happening in the brain in minutes to improved mental health, in this case well-being, 1 month later, is very powerful insight. Whether that's a truth or not, we'll wait and see, but it's an exciting bit of data.
So the entropic brain is leading to these therapeutic outcomes?
Yes.
Okay, maybe we can dive a little bit more into the entropic brain. You've sometimes described like a snow globe shaking, and I would love to hear more about when we shake up these processes. Are there any processes that maybe shouldn't be shooken up, or that, or any downsides to creating kind of the snow globe effect in the mind?
Potentially, definitely, yes.
Okay.
So let's take an example such as someone presenting with some emotional instability. Let's say, for example, a personality disorder. Okay. There's a presentation, a way of being, which is easy to fall into dramatically strong emotional states and feelings, and relationship splits and so on. A lot of drama, in a sense, and often close to a kind of breakdown like that, or a splitting through, thinking overly positive things about a person to maybe switching very quickly, or to overly negative things and just fixating on that. So that's instability. That's a personality level instability. So if you were to give a psychedelic to someone already vulnerable to that, in my mind, it's quite easy to imagine how you could induce or aggravate a state of instability, maybe push them into that problematic state that they're already inclined towards. So does that therefore mean that, but say borderline personality disorder is off the cards for psychedelic therapy, and I would say not necessarily. There just may be a way that we would do a treatment in an individual or a population of people with borderline personality disorder that is different, that we tailor the treatment in such cases because we need to tread a little bit more carefully and a little bit more slowly. Maybe have a more thorough, prolonged psychotherapeutic protocol. Maybe start with low doses and work up to higher doses. Maybe even use MDMA instead of psilocybin early on. I think this is where we start to get into the personalized medicine aspect of psychedelic therapy, and look into the future, some of the ways we could actually improve on current effectiveness and safety with this treatment.
It's interesting that you mentioned borderline. A lot of groups with certain mental health conditions are screened out of processes, so they haven't yet benefited from the research. But I just saw a study using MDMA with borderline personality, but they haven't launched yet. I'm curious if there's any other mental health conditions that you're specifically interested in studying, and if you have plans to do so.
Gosh, well, there's a lot. Again, there are things that I guess I know that maybe the general public don't know. So, for example, we're sat on some very promising data in anorexia, psilocybin therapy for anorexia, where the current findings are 60% remission rates at 3 months.
Wow.
And actually the responses improve with a bit more time, unlike, say, in depression.
Oh, wow.
Here you have a disorder where it takes a bit of time to improve the core pathology, because most basically people have to start eating and putting on weight. So that's really promising.
Are there any therapeutics that are that effective with anorexia?
That's putting me on the spot.
Okay, that's pretty impressive. Well,
it sounds
okay.
pretty.
Yeah.
I don't want to commit to say
Okay.
no, absolutely not. This is a major advance.
That's the best I've seen. Wow.
Yeah, it's it's the most deadly psychiatric disorder, and tragically, early in life. So major need. No really effective current treatment. So it probably is.
Wow.
I mean, it's a small trial, 20 people, but this is what we do. We do the small trials, demonstrate feasibility, demonstrate some promise, and then things build, and all of a sudden we're having the bigger trials and efforts to bring this to licensing. Another disorder would be chronic pain disorders. We've got signal in a trial with psilocybin therapy for fibromyalgia syndrome, so generalized chronic pain. Very promising early
And that's
findings.
in process?
That's it. That's the study. We've got one more patient to dose with psilocybin, and otherwise we've got 19 of 20, I think it is.
Any early findings you can share with the BrainMind community?
Well, I guess one fascinating one on the mind level, and no doubt on the brain level as well, is that people do often go back to traumatic experiences that have happened in their lives that they believe may have been causal in the pain they've come to inhabit, in a sense. And it's almost as if that pain is like the body's kept the score. It's in the body and it needs to be released. And so that has happened, and we haven't primed for it. It'd be easy for people to be skeptical and think, oh, you did something in your psychotherapy to prime them for that. But no, we've been very careful on that front.
Amazing. So you treat the trauma, which treats the pain.
Yeah.
Wow, fascinating. So I'd like to, maybe take a little bit of a hard left here, but I wanted to talk a little bit about priming and critical periods and what your views on how they impact therapeutic outcomes.
Sure, okay. So priming would be suggesting certain things that you then think are going to color the kind of experience people have and maybe the therapeutic response that they have. So, and then critical periods being like early in life, the hyperplasticity, the spongibility of people so that they can learn certain things more quickly. So both are very relevant, I think, in the context of psychedelic therapy. Dolan's model of reopening, especially it seems social critical period plasticity, is a very compelling model, and she's done very elegant work in different species, not just rodents, but
octopuses.
Octopuses as well, I say octopuses. Yeah, which is amazing, which are creatures that aren't, overtly that social, apparently, but become so under
they start
MDMA.
cuddling.
Yeah.
Not quite, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it's compelling. It makes sense. And I guess the question would be, is it that and only that? As in, is that everything that psychedelics do? They reopen early life plasticity? Or is it maybe even more fundamental, which is that there is a generalized plasticity? What is plasticity? It's the ability to be shaped or molded. Yes, it is true that we have that in spades early on in life, like hyper intense plasticity. Or is it just a thing about early life, I guess is the question. Or maybe it's a thing more fundamentally. Maybe certain species are more plastic than others. Maybe humans are. But I think as a model, as a heuristic to guide us, it's a very good one. And there's evidence to support it from Gould's work and some other work. I guess the key test now is, will it translate into a human? Where something that specifically relates to critical period plasticity, so something that humans learn early in life, maybe language, we can learn better in adult life with a psychedelic on board.
So eat some magic mushrooms, learn how to speak Spanish.
Okay. People are already trying.
I'm willing to run the experiment. So I would love to ask you kind of a related question. You're doing some extraordinary work with set and setting, which is interestingly not a well-studied part of the psychedelic experience. I would love to just hear more about what you're studying, any early assumptions or hypotheses that you have that might be valuable for this audience.
Sure. Well, I think it's an essential question for this space. So throughout the studies, the trials that have been done, especially the trials with psychedelic therapy, they've all manipulated the context, the set and setting, set being mindset, your expectations and your psychology that you bring to the experience, the setting being most simply the environment around the experience. We could also include a third term, matrix, which is like the extended setting, the psychosocial matrix, like an extended setting around you.
Could you say a bit more about that? Because I don't think people are generally familiar with matrix.
I think some people think setting is too committed to just the environment for the trip. So was there music? Was there a good guide? And they neglect maybe that after the trip you go home to a abusive partner or something and right back to square one with your mental health, because the matrix was poor. The setting might have been great, but the matrix was poor. So I think of it as like extended setting. Betty Eisner came up with the term, and it's a really good one. So in the study that we plan to do, we're going to manipulate all aspects of context, so set, setting, and what we can do of matrix, it's a little hard, but we can work on at least the aftercare, the integration. And so we will do that, and we'll have 4 arms. We'll have drug versus placebo. Drug will be psilocybin, a pretty big dose, 25 milligrams. Placebo will be inert placebo. And then the other factors, enrich set and setting, which is like psychedelic therapy as we do it today, with music, with compassionate, non-judging people trained to say the right things at the right time and not say the wrong things. It's probably a bigger issue. And to do prep work, psychological preparation and priming, which we think is part of the therapeutic model. And priming can just be like a healthy inquisitiveness, for example, like go in curious. Maybe even one aspect of priming is to say don't overweight your expectations too much, like managing expectations. There's all sorts of things. I guess you could extend priming to think of like the good relationship with the people who look after you for your experience. It seems critically important, that trust. So we'll have that in the prep, that building rapport, building trust, promoting an attitude of curiosity, openness, trust, willingness to let go to the sort of intrinsic direction that the drug, your mind, the interaction between the two takes you on. So that's the enriched, and then the unenriched is like going into a bog standard, I don't know if that translates, a standard clinical research unit. We talked to the manager of the clinical research unit that we have in the Department of Neurology here, at least the main one, and told her that the space that we wanted to use for our unenriched setting are their standard rooms. And she was quite good at taking this news. She was probably a little bit offended. Yeah, but was also kind of tickled by it.
I think I've seen those rooms and they're a little sparse.
Yeah, they'll have a picture of a tree in a field on the wall, but that's their enrichment, and otherwise there are stethoscopes and like advice for what to do or directions for what to do with a situation of like anaphylactic shock or and how to work.
Bare minimum on safety, but yeah.
Yeah, kind of scary priming for a psychedelic experience. So the kind of thing that ordinarily we wouldn't have in an enriched setting. So it's like the standard, that's unenriched, and then the enriched, which is kind of what we do typically at the moment. And then, the quality and depth of the prep, and the same for the integration, that compassionate, open, non-judging listening, giving time and space for people to describe through the experience. And then supportive words around it. Things are going to be a little more formal and clinical for the unenriched. But we feel that this is a necessary study to do because now, given things like the economics of psychedelic therapy, there's strong motivation to dial down the therapy because it's very expensive, and that expense could prohibit the scaling of psychedelic therapy, meaning, only the wealthy or people at least of some means can have this treatment. Because it's too expensive for most people. So is there a way to find a happy medium where there's enough support that can be scaled? And that's why a study like this is essential. My personal feeling, and indeed the formal hypothesis for the study, is that there will be a synergy. There'll be what we call a positive interaction between the drug and the set and setting. When the two come together, it's like 2 plus 2 equals 8 or something, It's a synergistic, multiplicative thing. You get more than if you just put the two things together. And
I think everyone intuitively believes that, but we don't know. So
we haven't tested it. Yeah,
research.
Because we haven't tested it, and economic forces are very strong, people are dialing down on the therapy. And there is a question mark, is this safe enough? And that question mark's very real right now. I think it's even impacting the sort of investment space around psychedelic medicine. People are thinking, can we really trust that this will be safe enough to scale? And so we really need to, it's essential that we work that one out. It's not an obvious sell to many people. Something like psychedelic therapy for anorexia, much easier sell. This can do positive in the world. We have this hypothesis around positive impact here. It's kind of a more basic scientific question. However, the implications will apply to all the different studies, all the different trials that are being done, and of course the rollout as well. So I do believe it could easily be a foundational study for the field. In a sense, whatever we find, I think there'll be that synergy. But if we're wrong, that's really big news as well. Future of neuroscience? Well, I would love for it to venture into the netherworlds of the human psyche, because I don't think it does very well at the moment, meaning it all stays quite shallow and surface level behavior and cognition. I think there's a world of depth and fascination under the surface that current human neuroscience isn't acknowledging, or indeed other neuroscience in other species. Well, we are hearing from truly cutting-edge scientists and also people that are doing applied science, developing technologies to treat people and measure things. And so, I guess that aim to try and push the barriers, push the frontiers, should naturally take us deeper. I think we're close to it, and I think it will come. I think we have like-minded people here. I think we have people here who believe the brain, in a sense. It's quite easy to think that maybe stuff of the mind can be beyond the brain. Maybe we're too wedded to one particular organ. We may well be, but there's good reasons to think that brain activity maps reliably and in a very close way to mind stuff. So I think here we have a lot of experts and a lot of people who do believe the brain. So it's in a sense an easier sell to say that even the most incredible, intense, transformative experiences can still be mapped to changes in brain function.